episode 127 of Closer Mentality. I'm your host, Julia Mellett. Before we begin this episode, I want to issue a trigger warning for suicidal ideation. If that might trigger you, feel free to pass on this episode and we'll pick back up next week. For everyone else, meet Ivy Watts. Track and field was essentially from the beginning her passion. At age 8, that looked like just trying to stay in the lanes. But when high school approached, legitimate collegiate roster opportunities presented themselves. USA Track and Field Junior Olympics recognized her speed in the 100 meter and the 4x400 relay, as well as the long jump, and she was off.
I was training all year round. I was doing, the winter and the summer track, the spring track, and training with a local track club in my hometown in Massachusetts. And then, as I continued on getting into high school, starting to break school records and, winning different competitions, just really, noticed that there was something there that I could continue on. And of course, there's always the next phase that we're thinking about, right? And especially as you're thinking about college, you're like, well, how am I going to pay for this? So track was also a big part of that for me, as well as the passion around it, but also knowing that it could be a space for me to make college more of a reality in that sense from a financial perspective. And yeah, I'm grateful that it turned into something that I was able to compete at the Division II collegiate level at University of New Haven and continue on my track career.
Watts found a home less than 2 hours away from Waltham, Massachusetts, at Division II's University of New Haven in West Haven, Connecticut.
Some coaches reached out to me. Other coaches, I reached out to them. At University of New Haven, I actually reached out to that coach. At the time, I was really focused in on forensic psychology and criminal justice. And I stumbled upon University of New Haven. It was the number 2 school in the country for forensics. So I was like, okay, great. I want to go here. And then looked into the track program. And the coach had done an incredible job with a couple of athletes, but one in particular, she came in and she was running 60 seconds in the 400. And then she ended up graduating, running 54 seconds, being a 9-time All-American, a national champion. So I was like, ooh, I want to work with this person. So I reached out to him and he was equally as interested in me. So he came out, he saw me compete. And it was interesting having different scenarios, different colleges that I could have gone to and having different conversations with different coaches. But for me, what was really important, of course, was the education piece and the track piece, but was also the school culture and the team culture. And going to different campuses, I didn't get the same feel that I did at University of New Haven of how tight-knit the team was, which was really important to me. And so it just kind of flowed from there, continuing having those conversations, kind of negotiating around scholarship funds. And yeah, before I knew it, I did my overnight, loved it. And then I was on campus as an athlete, as a student and an athlete. I think my coach was pretty strategic. I think he definitely wanted me and the other girls that came to campus that weekend to really, sign and become one of his athletes. So he had us come during homecoming weekend. And of course, it's so much fun. And I'm a high school student. I'm like, oh, this is what college is like. This is so amazing. So that was part of it. It was just a fun weekend. But my host was super incredible, answered all of my questions. And we did a team dinner that night. They invited me and I was at the team dinner. And it was just so fun, watching how kind everyone was to each other. They actually genuinely were friends. And that was something that was really important to me because at other schools, it seemed a lot more catty. And I didn't want that kind of dynamic. So when I was on campus, it was the fun of homecoming. And it was just the team and how tight-knit they were. And not just in being friends, but also supportive and loving towards each other. And when I asked questions, it was never I was asking too much or, being put off. So that was also really helpful. I got to see a practice. So that was good to kind of get a sense of of course, my coach is putting on his P's and Q's. But it was good to see coaching style a little bit. And he just drew me in as well. Like I said, I just loved how he got that one athlete from 60 seconds to 54 seconds. And for me, that's just, if you've ever been a track athlete, you know how much in a sprint those seconds are so difficult. Like you're trying to get a tenth of a second faster, not a whole second. And to see that change was like, oh my gosh, that's remarkable. And I had somewhat of a similar change. So I just really believed in him and his method, and he believed in me too. So it just felt like he became a friend too very early on, which was helpful in my decision.
The University of New Haven became the perfect melding of everything Watts envisioned college to be: the ideal classroom learning environment, and a set of renowned track training protocols from one of the best coaches in all of Division II. Under the watchful eye of then head coach for sprints, hurdles, and relays, Kevin LeSure, Watts transformed into a force to be reckoned with. But it didn't happen overnight. In fact, the process of improvement manifested itself in a form Watts was ill-prepared for, and it took a mental toll.
I think in college, so much of the beginning with my coach in particular is like almost breaking you down to build you up, and from a sense of like your form. And so I regressed a little bit there, which was so frustrating in the beginning because, you're like, oh, I'm a collegiate athlete, I should be doing better. But I had to adjust to the new way of running. I think for most high school track athletes, you're just running. You're going off of pure talent. When you get to college, now you're really focusing on your talent and your technique, and your lifting, and like, and. So that was a big shift for me.
In a sport where mere seconds determine podium finish versus curt thanks for comings, Watts turned into a toxic perfectionist. She analyzed her times until all that remained was self-loathing and performance anxiety. Meanwhile, her times on the track made her one of New Haven's most decorated sprinters. She became an All-American, nearly a 4.0 student, a Northeast 10 Conference Woman of the Year, and a finalist for the NCAA Woman of the Year. Her mental health was both fueled and catastrophized by the high of those accolades.
I had struggled with anxiety my entire life, and it was just something we never talked about. Mental health was just never talked about in my family. It was never talked about in athletics. I mean, we've made so much shifts since then, but when I was in high school and college, it just wasn't talked about at all. And I think how I was so high functioning was that I was driven by the need to be perfect, the need for other people to validate me. So I pushed and I pushed and I pushed so that I could look perfect on the outside and have everybody cheering for me, which was only feeding what I didn't have for myself: self-worth, self-love, like any of that confidence. So they were giving that to me, but it wasn't filling the hole that I had for myself. So like, yes, I had all these accomplishments, but for me, and that's why I said it's so nice to like reflect back and the growth that I've had in my own mental health, because I can even remember sitting at the NCAA headquarters being a top 30 finalist, but then they whittle it down to the top 15, and then they have the NCAA Woman of the Year. When I wasn't selected for the top 15, it was like, well, this top 30 means nothing now because I didn't get that next extra level of validation. It was like this big accomplishment now doesn't mean as much. The same thing with like being All-American. Like, yes, wonderful accomplishment, but I tied my self-worth to running that 54 seconds that I mentioned that one particular athlete was able to run. I see that he has done this for this athlete. I want that. That is perfect. And so poured my self-worth into running that time, and I got close, but I didn't run 54. So it just fueled this self-hate, and it was like nothing was ever enough. So I was able to push because of the desire for perfection, but in turn, I just lost myself more and more.
Watts realized that the initial allure for college experience at New Haven had neglected a crucial piece of her personal development. She had no one to offload the mental struggle of her development onto, so she internalized it.
In college, it probably came the most to light. And, as I mentioned, like with no talk about mental health, and unfortunately having teammates that had said some negative things about people who struggled with their mental health, not directed at anyone on the team, but just like general kind of comments. And these are people I looked up to, current leaders on the team. It almost added this dynamic of like, I'm not going to be able to talk about this. And my coach was very much like focused only on track. And if I went to him about anything outside of track, it was always brought back to track. And I did that very rarely. And so I learned that this is not a safe space for me to talk about anything, because it's always going to be brought back to, okay, let's work on your sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Let's work on your technique, right? Let's see like what we can change, like in the lifting room, like what can we do differently here versus what's happening in your mind? How's your mental health, right? What are you saying to yourself in the blocks? Like what's holding you back from reaching this goal? How can I support you? Here are resources that exist. Like those conversations were just never had. And I think I just learned that we just don't talk about anything other than the end goal. Running that 54 seconds, going to nationals, becoming All-American. That's it. And becoming national champions. Like that's it. And that was, I think, really eye-opening for me in a bad way, that I have to just struggle in silence in order to keep my spot, keep my scholarship, keep my status as a perfect person. I have to struggle in silence.
In an era predating the open mental health dialogue athletes are privy to now, Watts doesn't hold malice toward her coaching staff. She acknowledged that they didn't know what they didn't know.
And he's a kind, loving person. He just, you just don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of coaches, for one, don't know how to have conversations around mental health. They're too afraid to have conversations around mental health, because what if someone does say that they're struggling with suicidal ideation? Or what if somebody does need a day off? Well, then do I give them a day off, and the rest of the teammates, are they going to be pissed off at me? Are they going to say something? Is that going to like ruin the team morale? There's just so much fear that there becomes inaction, versus being able to see that when you do act, when you do take consistent measures to implement self-care and mental wellness into the day-to-day with your athletes, it makes a difference for not only how they feel about themselves, but their athletic performance. So I think a lot of coaches are just doing it wrong, in the sense that they're using fear as a way to just not even learn and to make changes. Or they're learning, but they don't think it really applies to them or their team, because all of their athletes look like they have it all together, like I did, right? They're like, well, I should be looking out for the kid who's crying every day, or, sitting in the corner and not showing up. And I think it's so important for coaches to know, and that's why I'm so open about sharing my story, that it's not always the one who looks like they're struggling. It is, right? It is. And we need to care about those people too. But also your star athlete, your star student, like they matter too. And they're most likely struggling with anxiety and perfectionism and self-doubt and. So I think that they're just getting it wrong, and like just feeling so fearful to not even try. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And it's so important to get educated.
Watts' high-functioning mental struggles fed into her perfectionism, creating a vicious cycle that ran entirely undetected by her coaching staff and teammates.
And I think as an individual sport as well, where it really is all on you, especially except for in a relay, it is very easy to have that perfectionist mindset. I think what helps is recognizing that it is okay if you begin to feel that way, but what are the tools you're going to use to help you to mitigate it or to move through it, or so that it doesn't completely like crash your entire world down if you don't reach that goal? So how can you feel into like the drive that you have to reach the goals and to win the race and to get a positive, to get a personal record, a personal best, right? How can you use that drive to go for that? But also, how can you give yourself self-love when things don't go the way that you wanted them to? And that's where I think that the line is really important. Like, have the drive, but use that same drive and ambition you use in your athletic space towards your mental health as well.
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless of if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human in this world going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a positive way. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. This is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options just in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. If this sounds like something that could help you, there's a link in the show notes to get you started on your therapy journey. It's betterhelp.com/closer mentality. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. Because finding a therapist is a little like dating. If you don't really fit with the therapist matched with you, it's easy and free to switch therapists without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/closer mentality. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/closer mentality. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this channel. Did you know that you can purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore? With Libro FM, you can pick from more than 325,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from real booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there, you know the name. But you'll be part of a different story, one that supports your local community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect way to squeeze more reading into your busy life. Listen with the free Libro FM app while you do chores, walk the dog, or relax at home. If you already love audiobooks and don't know what to listen to next, check out recommendations from the people who know best, booksellers. Closer Mentality has partnered with Libro FM on a special offer. Through the link in the show notes, you can get 2 audiobooks on Libro FM for the price of 1. Offer only valid for new members in Canada and the US. Thanks to Libro FM for sponsoring this podcast. Watts' expertise in the 200, 400, and 4x400 relay created a whirlwind that left very little margin for error. And she'd adopted 0 coping mechanisms for off days. A tenth of a second determined placement, and Watts identified her worth with such finishes. How hard could she will herself to push? And then, why not harder?
So my coach used to say the 400 is a grown man's race, which like is kind of, but you're not technically supposed to run that fast, that long. Like your body is going to break down. And there are the 4 Ps of the 400 that Michael Johnson, a Olympian way back in the day, had coined. And so it's push, pace, position, pray. So the last 100 meters of the race, like you're just praying. You're praying that your legs aren't going to give out. And like it all comes down to like your form and like really trusting into the training that you've put in. But it's so draining. And it's like you almost dread that last part because no matter how much you train, that last part is always going to hurt because you're not supposed to run that long. Like my coach used to always say as well, I can't coach you past 350 meters, right? Like that last 50 meters is just all heart. And so it's like, so who wants it the most at that point? And I think like how you mentally prepare for it, you know, I didn't do it well. I was more so in the, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Like, what if I mess up? What if I get hurt? Like, this is just going to suck. I'm not going to like spiraling. But I think one of the biggest things I would recommend to people is having your different like anxiety regulation tools, whether that's, you know, meditating before or journaling before or shaking out the anxiety literally before you're about to compete. Knowing that it's going to be painful, but also knowing that you have the strength to get through it and knowing that both can exist. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So that's what I wish I had done more of and like just allowed myself to have more fun with it versus having so much pressure.
The final 50 to 100 meters of the 400, as Watts alluded to, became where the elite distanced themselves, a true closer mentality. That finishing piece became elusive to Watts. Instead of internal motivation driving her spikes into the track, she was repeating self-doubt and negativity. What if this? What if that? The opposite of the flow state her training should have deserved.
I think when you have so much self-doubt and self-hate and someone passes you, okay, now I'm not enough, right? Or you feel your body start to break down. It's just like all of the negative self-talk, like I can't do this, like I'm not going to make it, like you should have trained harder. This is why that you should have done this and that. And it just like becomes this overthinking versus focusing on what you should be doing. and the energy starts to get put into a different space. And then if your mind shuts down, your body's going to shut down. And I think for me, it was like, instead of focusing on finishing the race, I was looking at the time right at the finish line. And so again, I'm chasing this 54 seconds, and it's almost like I'm starting to do math in my head. Okay, it's at 47 seconds right now. If I just get to, it's like, just finish the race, instead of being like, okay, I have 8 seconds to go, and and if I've done this before, and it's just like, I think it was just too much of the negative self-talk and the fixation on the 54 seconds, and the fixation on, like, where's coach? Is he going to be happy with me afterwards? Is he going to give me a hug after? Is he going to give me the silent treatment? Like, those were all the things going through my head more so than anything else, of like, just focusing in on, like, you've got this, you can do this, trust the training. It was everything but that, unfortunately. I think the biggest thing is like keeping the finish line in view, knowing that it's going to come, and really just like focusing down on your form was always the most important thing. Like, because if you don't, then it's like the mind, the body takes over, and you just really do. Like, it's like you're watching somebody like running in place at that point, because you can see like they're starting to break down. I think the other thing too is, like, at the end, everyone runs the 400 different, and there's the right way, and then there's the wrong way, and then there's someone's way, right? And there's always going to be somebody potentially that comes out of the woodworks and is passing you at the end. And whenever you get past, it's like your morale just completely shuts down. And then you again kind of just start running in place. So it's more so just like, my coach used to always say as well, like, just run your race. And I wish I had implemented that more, of like, okay, it doesn't matter that she just passed me, like, just keep running your race, because you can pass her back, right? There's still time in the race. Even though there's only 50 meters, so much can happen in those 50 meters. So much can happen, like, literally a meter before the finish line. Like, it's happened when someone thinks they're winning and then they lose right at the finish line. So I think it's form, running your race, staying focused, and just knowing the finish is near.
Junior year, Watts hit her emotional breaking point. A painful reminder that falling short of her self-imposed goals was still inextricably entwined with her perceived worth.
It was our Northeast 10 conference championships my junior year, and we were at American International College in Springfield. And Springfield's like not the safest place. And I didn't run my 54 seconds. I didn't win the conference championships like we had been talking about, for months. And I was, really on track to do so. But again, let the mental health struggles take me from doing that. And after competing and feeling like a failure yet again, I just like disappeared. I just like ran down a random street in Springfield, and I was just like gone for like a very long time, just truly just drowning in self-hate. And it's almost like a block in my memory, because I remember being gone. I don't remember exactly what I was saying or doing. I just remember like I was crying, and like I was just so frustrated with myself. And then I think why that was such a breaking point for me was because when I came back before the 4x400, it was like I just had to suck it up and pretend like I wasn't away for however long, crying miserable about being a failure and hating myself. And I had to put a baton in my hand and run a race again. So I think that was a breaking point for me, because it only solidified for me that I wasn't going to run this time. I felt like very stuck, like I'm not going to run this time. And no matter how I feel, I just have to push past it, because I have to do this for my teammates and for my coach. And nobody's going to ask me where I was, what I was doing, and if I was okay. So I think that was a big breaking point for me. But then also when I graduated from college and I didn't run that 54 seconds, it was like my whole world came crashing down, because there was no more track meets. It wasn't like I could say, okay, well, I have next Saturday. It was done. I wasn't competing anymore. And like that true feeling of a failure, like really sat deep into my soul. And then I was also beginning to lose my identity as well as a track athlete, from no longer having that since I was 8 years old. So that's really what began my spiral into like a deep depressive episode and struggling with suicidal ideation, because I just didn't know who I was anymore. And the person that I was, all I knew about her was that she was a failure.
The goal she had spent 4 years pushing toward suddenly meant nothing. None of the accolades mattered. The driving forces behind her need for success diminished hard and fast, and they left Watts devoid of direction and motivation. She had failed, and that thought buried itself deep in her psyche.
I spent a lot of time just like fighting demons in my own head. As I mentioned, struggling with suicidal ideation and just like wanting the universe to like take me away. And this was a solid like 2 years that this went on for. And like, again, like perfectionist mentality. I'm in the workplace now, trying to reach new goals and just kind of like pretending like I'm okay, planting the smile on my face. Nobody knew still that I was struggling, just like nobody knew in college or high school. And it wasn't until I had a conversation one day, like a casual lunch date with a friend, and she just opened up to me about her struggle with her mental health. And she told me she was getting help through therapy. And looking back at that conversation, it always amazes me because I was a psychology major in college. Like I knew about therapy. I knew about anxiety and depression, but like I knew, but I didn't know because it was like someone else's problem. Like it couldn't be me. Like I couldn't be weak or lazy or crazy, right? Like I believed the stigma as much as I like couldn't talk about it. I believed the stigma. And it was just so different for me when she told me that she was getting help because she was my high school track teammate. I cannot speak today. She was my high school teammate. And it was just like so incredible how she opened up to me just so easily. And that just like broke down a wall for me. This other person who I also think that she looks like she has it all together, like she is struggling and she's doing something about it. And like that was the biggest difference between the two of us is that like we were both struggling, but she was doing something. And like I wanted to experience that. Like I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was struggling. I was in this like really emotionally abusive relationship because that's what I thought I deserved. And so that conversation really just like saved my life because that's what allowed me to finally set up an appointment with a therapist and get the help that I've needed since I was a little girl.
Therapy convinced Watts, at that time traumatized into silence, that not only were her feelings valid and important, but that she could put down the weapons with which she was waging this emotional war.
It was just such a life-changing experience to be able to start to really name my anxiety, my triggers, my trauma, understand where some of it came from, and to really start to learn some new tools. And that was the most important part of it, was to learn some new tools to how to learn to like myself, which grew into learning to love myself and to really start to find my voice and know that my voice mattered and it wasn't a sign of weakness to talk about my mental health. Having a trained professional on the other side who really knew about my struggles and wanted me to move through them and get through them and to be there with me every step of the way was just so valuable for me. And yeah, I'm so thankful for therapy and all that it's done for me. I mean, it's helped me to be able to share my story in the way that I do now, because there was the shining light at the end. But I also, want people to know, right? It's not like you get help and then you're fixed and everything's good. Like healing is a lifelong journey, and I still am actively getting help because I'm actively struggling with different things. Life comes and hits you, but I just know how to handle them differently, much, much differently than I did before.
Watts says that the biggest obstacle in her healing journey was recognizing that the relationship she creates with her mental health is just that, a journey, a wave to ride, not an end point. That concept led Watts to Boston University, where she interpreted mental health into a master's in public health in 2017. No longer would she allow others to struggle in silence as she did.
So it's a really great intersection, actually. So public health is really like having that preventative approach, right? And I think in the work that I do in my mental health talks and workshops, it's really helping from that preventative approach and that you don't have to wait. But also public health is meeting people where they're at too. So we want to have a preventative approach. That's the goal. But especially for these schools who are still trying to figure it out and students who are still trying to figure it out, so many of us are burnt out, overwhelmed, exhausted, and then just drowned by the pressures and expectations. And so if you are in that space, the message is not that there's no hope for you or you waited too long. The message is, no, this is still a great time for you to take care of yourself and pour into yourself before it continues and gets worse. It's a really beautiful intersection because with public health, really meeting the community and people where they're at, but also really providing the tools to help them to prevent their struggles from getting worse or prevent them from struggling. It's been beautiful, the last 7 years doing this work and speaking with students, student athletes, and coaches, and sharing my story and my message, and messages that I really share, like it's okay to not be okay, and that you don't have to wait for your struggles to get so big and overwhelming like I did to start getting help for yourself, and your voice matters and you're worthy of getting help, and all of these different messages. And it's been really, really incredible over these last 7 years to see student athletes come up to me after my talk and say things like, I didn't realize that if I was being negative with myself and that was causing anxiety around my performance, that I could talk to somebody about that. Like, so many people think that they have to wait until they're so depressed that they can't get out of bed to talk to somebody, to take care of themselves, to show up for themselves. And it's been so beautiful, the amount of narratives that have shifted and the amount of student athletes who have then gone and talked to their coaches or booked a session with the counseling department after hearing me speak. And I remember back in like 2019, there was a yes. Yeah, there was a male lacrosse player, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, "Because of you, I now have the strength to go and make an appointment with the counseling center." And like that was like so early in my career, and I was like, this work matters so much, for this athlete to feel so seen. And he had told me, like, I've been struggling for so long, and like now because of you, I finally have the strength. And like it's what keeps me going, honestly, because it's not easy, but these students, they matter, and they deserve that support. So it's been so beautiful, so beautiful.
Are you an athlete rehabbing from an injury? Are you a coach or athletic trainer seeking additional support for your injured athlete toolkits? KT Tape has exactly what you need. KT Tape is a rehabilitation tape that helps stabilize and compress sensitive areas of the body during exercise. Apply KT Tape to an area either in pain or in recovery and feel the difference. KT Tape is comfortable, stable, and long-wearing. There's tape for all modes of action, from gentle, which is safe for easy activity and everyday use, to pro extreme, for athletes in moderate to high-impact exercise. KT Tape makes water-resistant tape as well for a more adaptable rehabilitation implementation. KT Tape caters to lifelong athletes and focuses on reducing muscle soreness for all users when worn during exercise and up to 48 hours post. Are you an athlete in need of prescription sports goggles or sunglasses? Today's final sponsor may have just the solution for you. A Sight for Sport Eyes was created when founder Shannon Knight saw a niche that was perpetually going unfulfilled. A Sight for Sport Eyes grew out of a need for education surrounding the impact of sport-related eye injuries and their lasting repercussions. A Sight for Sport Eyes runs like a regular optical practice, not an e-commerce store. Their goal is to give you the same high-quality service and name-brand lenses made by the best optical laboratories in the country, geared specifically for athletes and athletic use cases. If you need new lenses or frames, A Sight for Sport Eyes is the perfect place to get them. The links to BetterHelp.com, Libro FM, KT Tape, and A Sight for Sport Eyes are all in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the episode. Now removed from competition, Watts pivoted her offerings. Through her speaking engagements and mentorship, she educates coaches, students, and student athletes on somatic healing techniques.
I've recently started getting more into the world of somatics and like healing through your body, because there's like so much stored trauma and stress in our bodies that we don't know how to shake off. And I know I have a lot of that. And so that's been really, really helpful too, to start to learn those like nervous system regulation tools that like I truly wish we had known more about. I mean, we didn't even know a lot about mental health at that point in college athletics, but that's just been like so beautiful for me now to like really begin to embody self-love in a different way that takes it a step beyond the affirmations and just like the awareness and the talk therapy. It takes it a step beyond, which has been awesome.
Somatic techniques include the melding of mind and body awareness, to release trauma, stress, and emotionally held pain. Yoga, breathwork-centric exercise like dance, and psychological skills like progressive muscle relaxation are a few grounding principles that enable nervous system regulation.
I'm just very blessed. I mean, I think no one wants to struggle in the ways that I did or in the ways that they are currently struggling in, but there really is always beauty on the other side of it. It's just about allowing your body and your brain to know that you are worthy of making it through to the other side and that it is possible. You don't have to stay stuck where you're at. And that's unfortunately the mentality of a lot of people. But with the right help and the supports, that can be different. Like, you're not stuck in your pain. There is the other side of it. And so I'm grateful that the story that I had, the struggles that I had, have allowed me to be making the impact that I am right now. I think the best thing that's come out of it is to help, like, inner Ivy, like inner child Ivy, to have the message that she never heard, and to be able to share the message with students in a way that I wish I had heard, a way that I needed to hear. I needed a speaker to come or a coach to say and normalize and be vulnerable and allow for space for me to be seen and heard. And so that really, like, heals a part of me. And then also, I have a 3-year-old daughter. And so for me, I'm like, well, these students will one day be her coaches, her mentors, her bosses, and if they are educated to be more compassionate towards themselves around mental health, they'll be more compassionate towards others around their mental health. And that's how we just have this, like, beautiful ripple effect, this domino effect around mental wellness and self-love, that my daughter will just hopefully have that message just ingrained in her from the adults that are around her. So that also feels like a really beautiful impact of it as well.
Watts has since created an illustrious speaking career and has a wealth of other courses and blog posts to assist struggling individuals. Links to those outlets are in the show notes. At this point in her life, Watts considers herself a, quote, recovering perfectionist. She admits that unattaching that piece from the way she defines her self-worth remains a struggle, but she urges everyone to assess their path toward whatever they deem success, honestly and with inevitable fault factored in.
With perfectionism, although, like, I'm a recovering perfectionist, like, it's just something that's a part of me, I think giving compassion to that part of you, and also knowing that, searching out for perfection is this unattainable goal. And it's just always going to make you feel bad about yourself. And so what if you could just be okay with the idea that it's going to be messy? And actually, messy is what's going to help you to see the other side quicker. When you're constantly looking for that perfectionism in your healing journey, it's going to actually make it a lot harder and a lot longer, because you're going to be more frustrated with yourself of, why am I not getting this right? But, your triggers, your traumas, the past anxieties, like, those things are just a part of you. We can't forget them, right? We can rewire them. We can change our response to them. We can have more compassion towards them, but you will be triggered again. You will experience hardship. You will experience anxiety. You might experience a depressive episode, but it doesn't make you a failure. And what I think is so important for people to see is that no matter what happens to you, no matter what mental health challenge you face, like, you as a person have always been and will always be worthy. Like, just because you might struggle with anxiety does not mean that you are a failure or you are an anxious person. You just have anxiety. Like, and that's okay, right? I have anxiety. Like, I struggle with depression. And that's okay. And that's okay. So I think it's about seeing that no matter what you do, your accomplishments, your mental health, anything like that, like, you will always be worthy. And that has helped me with the perfectionist piece. Like I said, it's a journey. But I think that the sooner that you can realize that it's not going to be a straight line, it's not going to be linear, you're supposed to have down parts, you're supposed to have struggles, it's just part of life, the sooner you can have more compassion for yourself. I think when it's like you've had a very long period of struggles without that support, without feeling better at all, okay, then let's investigate that. Let's get support for you. But it's not that you're supposed to be happy all the time, because that's just not realistic.
Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 127, and a special thank you to Ivy for sharing her story with Closer Mentality. You can listen to she and I's full interview on the Closer Mentality Uncensored YouTube channel. All pertinent links to that, as well as to all of Ivy's programming, are in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to Closer Mentality. As always, I'm your host, Julia Millet. See you next week.